When I was 14 years old, I had a dream. A dream that nearly a decade later, I couldn't forget. I thought it was my destiny to be a professional wrestler on national TV. A decade later, I finally made it. Or so I thought. In less than a year, it was over.
Right, so you disappear, you're off television, you're done. What's the story?
And nobody knew why.
I think a lot of people have read on the internet that I've got hepatitis C, and everybody else thinks I've just got brain damage.
This is the story of my final tour. On the shows where I started, with the people I knew.
No, I can't wrestle anymore. Please feel sorry for me.
It was the last time I'd ever wrestle. The last chance to say goodbye. The last hope for a resolution. The last of McGuinness.
皆さんこんにちは、プロレスリングノアの健太です、レスリングラウンドテーブル絶対見逃さないように。
Welcome back to the Wrestling Roundtable. Join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Wrestling Roundtable. We've got a group page and a fan page. Like us there, join in the conversation. Switching up the panel a little bit, we're back with Rodney Martin Orlando, and we're going to talk about the internet wrestling community. Now, going into this really got spawned, I think, by the exchange on Twitter the other month between Kevin Nash, who made comments about the vanilla midgets, and of course the internet coming to their hero's defense, and both sides saying really stupid shit. But I didn't want to necessarily start off on making this a general smart mark discussion, because the internet does reach a lot more people than just the diehards. So starting off, because this is something people talk about all the time, and I think they've got a skewed idea of what it means. It's something you've repeated a lot on the show, so I'll go to you first. And the question is, did the internet ruin wrestling?
No. I think that it's wrestling's inability to adjust to the internet is what ruined wrestling. I think that there are a lot of people behind the scenes that can't keep their mouths shut. As far as ruining surprises, they find anything, they have to go to whoever, spread it on the internet somehow, and make it so it seems like wrestling's being ruined. The cat's out of the bag. There's no magic anymore, as Bobby Heenan has said it in the past.
Well, a lot of people seem to have that opinion, that we know too much, as if there weren't dirt sheets before that did the same thing. The internet reaches a lot more people than dirt sheets or books or magazines might have in the past, so the knowledge is more out there. However, the way people say that it's ruined the fun, it's ruined the surprises and whatever, granted, surprises are great, and we do like when Cena comes back at the Rumble and no one expected it and stuff like that. I kind of look at it differently, and the way I think the internet ruins wrestling is not in that aspect, because to me, these are the same people that say wrestling is an art, and it is. It is an art form, so in that sense, even if you get a movie spoiled for you, the ending, maybe you don't necessarily want that to happen, of course, if you're seeing it the first time, but if it's a well-known story, maybe it's something that a lot of people know about, you still go to see it anyway. You know the good guy's going to come out on the end, so I look at it more like an art. I kind of look at it from an outsider's perspective, like how did it pan out? I don't necessarily care if I know someone may be coming back. I want to see how it plays out. Maybe I just look at it differently because I've had experience in it. But do you think the internet ruins wrestling by lifting the veil too much, knowing too much behind the scenes stuff?
Yes, because you could give a little information, but nothing important. Then it'd be fine. But if you give too much, just like my brother said, if you give away too much and everything, it kind of just ruins it and it just doesn't make you want to watch it at all.
At the same time, how could we be upset when McMahon comes out and says they don't want to insult our intelligence, but then everyone complains that the internet ruined wrestling because now we know everything?
I kind of seen it as a natural progression. 25 years ago, everybody read the magazines and then they had hotlines and everything, but as time goes on, it's the natural progression. Now everybody gets their information from the internet, not only with wrestling, but TV, movies, everything's online. So now that everything's online, of course, wrestling fans are going to go online and try to look for the same information.
I think that's the aspect the internet ruined wrestling, not by lifting the veil and giving us too much information, it's misinformation. And here's what I mean. As we've done the show, and we've seen a lot of conversation and comments across our various sites and shows and stuff, the lack of knowledge and the perpetuation of myth and just really bullshit. It's amazing in the information internet age that this still happens. And I'll give you, for instance, people still say, WCW never revealed who the Hummer driver was. Yet on April 10th, 2000, they did. Now, how does this happen? This is just as an example I hear all the time. WCW never did. WCW never did. April 10, 2000 Nitro, they revealed Bischoff. That Nitro did a 3.1 rating. So even if we go into the second hour, which had happened, a 2.6. That's what, about 3.5 million people? How do 3.5 million people watch this? And in the age of the internet, even if it's a decade later, people still don't know this. I was looking up Tank Abbott stuff for something. I was reading a UFC article, I look up Tank Abbott, and fucking Wikipedia is the worst thing for this. Wrestling information especially, when you've got these people who listen to bullshit that WWE feeds them and then they put it in Wikipedia like it's a fact. I'm reading Tank Abbott's thing and it says that he was brought into WCW for a feud with Goldberg and it never happened. Never happened? Motherfucker, I just did a quick YouTube search and found their match. Like, how does that shit happen? And this has come up a lot because of this time. The finger poke of doom. How much perpetuation of bullshit and slant is this that people still talk about it like this killed WCW when they had been losing in the ratings for almost a year. And the ratings didn't drop, which were still good for Nitro, for another quarter of a year. Now, wrestling is an art, like I mentioned, so it is also a business, and that gets into a gray area like movies and music where maybe it's not objective in a sense, but then it sells a lot of songs or has a big box office and you think it's crap, but if people are buying it in that amount, doesn't that mean it's good? Or maybe a lot of people think it's good, so it gets into a gray area here. But the finger poke of doom. You look at the numbers. Hundreds of thousands of people switched over when they revealed that, and then WCW was never the same. Motherfucker, the finger poke of doom did a huge number. They never mentioned that. And then they don't mention the fact that the next Thunder was like the second highest rated Thunder ever. But moving into another aspect of the internet, you mentioned how wrestling hasn't really changed with the internet times. Maybe they don't even...
I mean, recently they have.
Well, they're getting more social media stuff involved. Twitter, Facebook, etc. But it seemed for a while, especially WWE was very adamant against that, as opposed to, let's say, ROH or ECW, where they utilized it in a lot of ways. So do you think the internet and social media in general, Twitter, whatever, is an effective way to run angles? Because we've seen people write blogs and comments on message boards and websites trying to build up to an angle. This is more of an indie thing, I guess. But do you think that's an effective way to use the internet in the modern era?
Yeah, especially in today's day and age. Of course, there are a lot of different independent wrestling promotions out there. So a lot of wrestlers, they can't be in one city 1 week to help promote a show. So what's the easiest thing to do? Go on the internet, just type something on Twitter, make a video of yourself. I'm challenging you and you and you, blah, 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 and just nice and simple.
Well, I think it's kind of lame in a way. If it's a video, then it's a promo, and I can get that. But if I'm reading someone's comments on Twitter, and they always try and work people on Twitter and work angles and stuff, if I'm reading a blog that's someone's comments trying to build up a match, it just seems like I'm reading an actor mag from like the 80s or 90s. So I don't know. I'm not digging it.
Matt Hardy and Edge angle. I think without the internet, that wouldn't have had the legs that it had, but it did give Matt Hardy momentum. Could have been a huge angle, especially with the first match going on at SummerSlam. Social media has a lot of legs, especially with YouTube. If they utilize it properly, I think they could build stars on their own because wrestling fans are very social media heavy, and I think that's a great platform to build characters.
Well, I think in an aspect that doesn't necessarily, because when you say the internet, you always think smart marks and the people that know everything about the industry. But I think a lot of these sort of maybe sort of casual or less knowledgeable fans, I don't want to say necessarily marks, although there are those out there, those sort of people who go to www.com whenever they're told or go to the Facebook or Twitter, maybe they are more into it than the people who see through it and all that stuff. But we're going to get into the smart marks in a bit when we come back. So coming up next, more about the IWC.
This is the new effing show, Jerry Lynn, and you're watching the Wrestling Roundtable. Giddy up.
Welcome back to the Wrestling Roundtable. We were talking about the internet wrestling community, and there's lots of ways to connect with us on the internet where you're watching us, of course. Go Fight Live, Blog Talk Radio, YouTube, Facebook, 2 pages on there, Twitter, WREST Roundtable, Rest Roundtable at Twitter, and of course you can get the links to all that on WrestlingRoundtable.com. Switching up the panel to my right, which is your left, Will Brooks and Alex Payne. They've both been fans of 25 years, but Alex Payne's been wrestling 7. You were a fan starting out, and you obviously knew about the internet, and you're of that age age, and now you're wrestling for those people, essentially. So let's move on to the smart marks. Now, the term smart mark or smark, I always thought for a while that smark was supposed to be someone I think more like us. Not to the extreme of smart marks, 5 stars and realistic, all that bullshit. And then the marks who don't really know a lot of stuff and maybe are more casual, enjoy different things. I figured smark would describe us right in the middle because I don't think we're one way or the other. But now it seems smark has been commandeered to mean smart mark message board dwellers. So fine, if you want to use that, go right ahead. Now those sort of fans, I'm not a very big fan of, not just because they hated me on Ring of Honor, but they
too.
Well, there we go.
We're hated together.
Exactly. But because I think they just really overanalyze stuff too much. And that's why when we get accused of that shit, you're overanalyzing, smart mark bullshit. Us smart marks on this fucking show, I've stood up for New Jack, Yokozuna, and Sid, fuck you.
And Lex Luger.
Exactly. So I don't like being classified as that by people who don't really know us that well. Maybe see one show, have a stupid opinion, and say trolling comments and stuff. But smart marks, because a lot of indies and indie wrestlers have built reputations on them. Hell, Ring of Honor got a lot of business from that, and so do a lot of promotions like PWG. So what do you think the role of the smart mark is in the wrestling world? Is it they're the hardcore, diehard foundation of wrestling in terms of the fans that will never go away? Or are they just more of a niche that doesn't really have that big of an effect on the product?
They're the bitch about everything.
Right.
Every single thing. No. The truth is, I think a smart mark helps pump some lifeblood into a lot of organizations. They're diehards for a reason. They're passionate. They love professional wrestling. That's the reason why, like you said, Ring of Honor had such a diehard base for a long period of time. The diehard fan or the hardcore fan started off in the Philadelphia regions to begin with. And so you started noticing they didn't necessarily cheer for what they were supposed to be told to. They like to rebel against the norms of who you're supposed to like. So when they started cheering for the Freebirds or something, for instance,
or Flair in '89,
they booing Hogan when they liked somebody different. They changed the guard a little bit. They had some influence, whether it was on a larger scale or this smaller internet scale that the independents are used to. So yes, they are a huge lifeblood. There should be someone you should listen to. But a lot of mainstream fans won't listen to them. They'll jeer them, but that's just how it is. That's kind of societal.
Don't you think that they, as the type of fan they are, and I know we're being general and stereotypical here, but don't you think that they as fans have a pretty narrow view of what wrestling is? I mean, pro wrestling can't, especially in America, just be this strong style Japanese stuff, right?
No. Sometimes I wonder if they understand it is a business, it's supposed to make money. You got to go with the guys who make you the most money and put them in the spots where they're showcased a lot. Now, granted, do I want to see more guys built up or smaller guys get a better shot? Of course I do. But I also understand today that John Cena is the big name. He's going to be the guy to bring in the most money. Of course, he's always going to be put in a position to make him look good.
Unfortunately, Fit Finlay is not going to be the world heavyweight champion.
Right.
I might be a big Fit Finlay fan. I might like William Regal a whole lot. I love the wrestling. I want to see them on wrestling shows.
But you realize why they're not in that
Exactly.
spot.
It's like I know what their role is, and I've come to realize that. Steven Regal was TV champion for a reason in WCW. He wasn't the world heavyweight champion. He did well with building up guys, was put in a role, and stayed in that role because he excelled in it. Doesn't mean he couldn't ever be more than that or challenge for a title, but he was nowhere near world's heavyweight champion.
Well, last week you had a question we didn't get to. I wanted to apply it to here about the preconceptions of pro wrestling before I got into it and how that changed. And that made me realize that all these smart marks on the internet that think they know so much, maybe they know a lot, but they don't know nearly as much as they think they do. There's a lot of different things that happen backstage that they're not even made aware of because the internet, some of it's true, some of it may not even be accurate at all. And the only time I ever really dropped the whole, well, you've never been on the other side of the guardrail thing, because I don't try to do that. The only time I bring that up is when they, who have never even been in a ring, call themselves gurus and experts. I've been in pro wrestling over 8 years, and I've got this big memory that people always say, how do you remember all this stuff as just a fan before that? And I've talked to wrestlers, and they've complimented me on my knowledge and everything, and that's nice, but I still wouldn't call myself an expert because I know how much I don't know. So when they call themselves a guru and I'm an expert, that's the only time I'm like, what the fuck have you we've done. So that was a big preconception.
Knowledge
all right,
you started watching 10 years ago.
What is the real power of the internet, though? Because, for instance, Rock and Goldberg in 2004, the word spread. I know it was a radio interview, but people knew about it. Or more recently, one of the Royal Rumbles a few years ago when everyone knew Christian was coming back, Christian, and WWE was like, fuck that, we're going to turn Matt Hardy heel just to swerve you. That's a very Vince Russo thing, too. So is that the real power of the internet, is information and word?
Yeah, I think it really just gives wrestling fans another platform to connect with each other, trade videos, and share knowledge with each other too. A voice as far as who to root for, who to cheer for. Smart marks will have an impact at WrestleMania 18 when everyone's cheering for Hogan and booing Rock. They will have an impact when everyone's booing Cena, but WWE did a good job of not listening to them and really trying to make it something unique and not turning him heel right away.
Or yes last year in Florida.
Yeah, or when they go into Bizarro World.
Right.
The biggest problem I have with it is it causes promotions to overthink. Like, oh, they all know this is going to happen. Well, fuck them, we're going to do this.
We're going to swerve it just for the sake of a swerve.
Yeah, like with Bobby Roode last year at Bound for Glory, when he didn't win.
He should have won the world title when it was supposed to happen.
Yeah, and then like they didn't. Oh, everybody thinks we're going to do it, so fuck them, we're not going to do it. Like, what? No, that's what we all wanted.
It's okay to go down the right path. If people kind of know what's expected, and if it's not going to hurt you, go with it.
Yeah, and it showed that when they voice their opinions, voice their want, and they stick with wrestlers, we have moments like Guerrero and Benoit hugging with both titles
see that
at WrestleMania 20. That was almost an acknowledgement of like, all right, here you guys are.
Right.
There
but
it is.
The real power of the internet is still information. It's just there for you to use. We've emphasized this on the show many times. Utilize YouTube. Utilize the information while it's there. Use your own brain. That's why when people say stuff like Martha Hart's trying to destroy Owen Hart's legacy by keeping him out of the DVDs and WWE's trying to alter history, what do you think YouTube is? They haven't deleted everything yet. It's right there for you. Just because it's not on DVD crystal clear, but it's there.
You can't look and search for it.
Exactly. Do your own homework.
And if it's not on DVD, it doesn't mean that it hasn't been altered.
Right. Well, that being said, we have been on YouTube and Go Fight Live, Blog Talk Radio, other places on the internet for several years now. What do you think our role is as a show, as a community, the Wrestling Roundtable? And I'd like to start with you because as a wrestler, I know whenever we do a show and we get wrestlers' approval for it, because we're really talking about their work, that means a lot to me. Because I know we don't sugarcoat things and we talk about controversial things and touchy subjects. We don't want to hide our heads in the sand a lot. So when I get praised for, or we get praised for doing the show, that makes me feel really good. So what do you think about your involvement on the show and how we've done over the years?
As far as my involvement is concerned, I've hoped to help you guys out more than anything, whether it's lend credibility because a pro wrestler's been on the show, or just help drop my knowledge with you guys and share it with the internet and share it with whoever's watching. I may not be the biggest professional wrestler in the world. I've had my opportunities. I've wrestled for a lot of good places. But I give a different light to a sport, an industry, a business that we all tend to love, and that's why we're talking about this here today. All I can hope is that whatever I say will hopefully ignite some sort of interest in someone to go out and either see an independent wrestling show or go out and watch a match that I talked about or think about a topic that we take to heart. That's all I think the Roundtable as a whole should be doing and hopefully is doing for everybody.
What do you think about your role on the show, Will Brooks? Because you started out as a fan and then came to Pro Wrestling Respect because we talked about it and came to the show that we promoted, and then you were interviewing Dan Severn the next year or so. So how do you feel about being on the show and our role in the internet wrestling community?
Well, first off, I love that I got to be on the show. I was a big fan. I knew you guys filmed in Jersey, I just couldn't know where. I heard the accents. I was very happy when I realized you guys were promoting a show 15 minutes from my house. I'm like, holy shit, I gotta be there. Be on the show has been a great honor. I've had a lot of fun. But to answer your question, what's our role in wrestling? I like to think we give balance. We're like the intermediate between just regular people who watch it and the people who are too smart for their own good.
Right. I
think we like to give a good balance. We don't lie. We're honest with everything we do. What we liked, why we didn't like it, who we liked, who we didn't like, and what shows were good, why they were good, and everything in between.
And you've been on the show since the first season, December 2007, Rod. So what do you think about how we've grown since then and the audience that we've gotten and the shows that we've done?
Well, even though I'm not as passionate with wrestling now as we were even when we first started the show, the one time we were very passionate, and we still kind of keep up. You probably more so than me as far as like what's going on. I think when we first started this show, I knew that our opinions were gonna spread like wildfire. I knew we had interesting opinions, and we have knowledge, and we have a lot of credibility. I just like how we were able to form not just a fan base, but a community, and get conversations going, and get conversations with social media, get that running. It's great to see fans like Will and Orlando who come on the show as fans and then kind of come on the other side in front of the camera. As part of the internet wrestling community, I think we share a lot of knowledge and open up people's eyes to things that they might not have seen before, turn wrestling fans into MMA fans and vice versa, and like Will said, provide a great balance, not be too far one-sided on certain topics.
Right, and one of the things I always hope to accomplish with this show is, even though, yes, we're all wrestling fans to varying degrees and MMA fans as well, and trying to bring everyone together, performer, fan, etc., just have a nice conversation going in general. One of the things I hope to accomplish, I've mentioned before, is that if we can get you thinking critically or importantly about something maybe ultimately trivial as an art form like pro wrestling, maybe we can get you thinking differently about everything in life. Maybe it's a big high hope, but I just hope to help improve people's knowledge. When people say, oh, I never knew that before I watched your show, or I just started watching your show and I've been listening to it back, I love it. This is something that I take really to heart, and I'm very glad that we've got fans across the world in different countries who are watching us and saying these sort of things. So thanks a lot for the support over the years. Unfortunately, next time we tape, which will be, I believe, after WrestleMania, it's going to be our last taping. We're going to be taping 2 more shows, and then we're all going to be moving on. So thanks for your support over the years, and don't give up yet, because even though the show might not be taping anymore, we're still going to keep the accounts open, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. That's all going to be there for you in perpetuity. So don't think we're going away completely, and maybe it's not the end. Who knows, something might pop up. We'll see. But coming up next time, we'll be wrapping up Wrestling Roundtable with 2 more shows, so stick with us. Until then, go to WrestlingRoundtable.com, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Go Fight Live, Blog Talk Radio, etc. So for the panel of Alex Payne, Will Brooks, Martin and Rodney LeConte, Orlando O'Neill, I'm Eric Santamaria. Thank you for watching.